Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the ELTA Live webinar series. If you are a returning visitor, welcome back. If you're a first-time participant, hopefully you'll become a long-term attendee of the ELTA webinars, or perhaps an ELTA member. Many thanks for joining us tonight, and special thanks to those participants who decided to choose this webinar instead of perhaps watching the Football World Cup. This is the fourth event in the ELTA Live webinar series, and I'm your host tonight. My name is Orsolya, Szabó, and I'm happy to be an ELTA ambassador in Hungary. I'm a lawyer by background and had spent more than 11 years with big law offices in Central Eastern Europe, doing cross-border M&A transactions in the region. Currently, in addition to my role with ELTA, I'm also a co-founder and CEO of Investi Legal Tech Consultancy, a management firm advising both business clients and law firms in Central Eastern Europe on optimizing legal work processes. In this episode of the ELTA Live webinar series, we will focus on pragmatic aspects of legal technology and specifically on accessing and extracting business value from legal big data. At the latest ELTA webinar in the end of May, for those of you who participated, you may remember that Maria brought up the very important question of how to actually manage digital transformation in the legal field. And I'm hoping that tonight's webinar will provide inspiration to start viewing contract databases, legal files and legacy archives as legal big data sets that can be more efficiently accessed and managed with the help of technology and in particular legal AI. And just a quick mention on the fact that we're actually doing a web recording of this webinar, and it will be available on ELTA's YouTube channel shortly after this webinar. So at this point, I would like to hand over a little bit and introduce tonight's guest speakers, David Rivett and Margaret Warrington from Nalytics. David is a co-founder and COO, and Margaret is a product manager at Nalytics. David, Max, welcome to tonight's webinar. Thank you for joining us tonight, and please share a bit more details about your professional backgrounds.
Okay, thank you and welcome to everyone. Thanks, Orshi. My background, I think it's roughly 30 or slightly more than 30 years in IT industry. My background's a technologist. I've developed software around integration. More recently, we've been working in industries where we're dealing with lots of case management and specifically legal over the last 4 or 5 years. And we've evolved this capability around searching and discovering unstructured data. So a lot of history, know about how to integrate and know about how to handle information for organizations. So these things like big data and AI are in some ways old hat, but in some ways are very new and very relevant. So pleasure to be here tonight to talk about it.
Hi, I'm Margaret Warrington, or Mags as I'm generally known, product manager here at Nalytics. And I also have about 30, I'm scared to say about 30 years experience in IT, starting off in development through support, technical writing, and for the past 12 years or so in product management, and for the past 15 or 16 years, in fact, in search technologies, including past couple of years here at Nalanda.
Thank you so much for these insights into your professional backgrounds. I actually came across the Nalytics team in my consultancy work with Investi. We are developing a legal tech marketplace on Investi's website, and we found the specific pragmatic features of the Nalytics platform very relevant for our services. So you are more than welcome to look up on the Investi marketplace how we envision working with the Nalytics platform. But for tonight's webinar, I'm particularly pleased to host Nalytics for at least 2 reasons. Number one, they not only developed practical solution to help with legal big data challenges that I'm also dealing with in my legal career, but given their 30 years of experience, as they mentioned, with managing data sets, and they have developed a strategic view and a know-how that I thought would be great to share with fellow lawyers. And number two, the pragmatic approach of Nalytics towards artificial intelligence, I think, really helps us to look beyond the hype around AI and really understand what this technology has to offer to us lawyers. Okay, we've got a lot to go through tonight. I prepared a whole list of questions around legal big data to ask David and Mags. So with this short introduction, let's get started. So how would you define big data actually? What do you think it would mean specifically in legal context?
So first of all, if I talk about big data, then I think the first thing to clarify is we're talking about the unstructured world. So the big data over the last sort of five or more years is, we're talking lots and lots about all of the information that gets generated, almost the sensor type information, and just the vast volumes of lots of data. And you could focus in solely on areas like that. But making it more relevant to any organization, I think every one of us, and I'm sure everyone that's listening, we would class ourselves as information workers. So we're using emails, documents, systems that we're recording cases and matters with our clients. And so we're managing and looking for, and we're managing digital data and digital documents. So we're information workers, and because of that, big data to us is our history, our email archives, our shared drives that we've got. So even for a small organization, it could be, that's big data for them. So, big data isn't just about, these new technologies to sort of expand and store and manage the proliferation of masses of data out there. It's very much in a business like a legal business. It's absolutely all of the history for their clients, their matters, their documents, the emails, the correspondence, all the history that goes with that. And that's what I think is relevant. Now, what do we do with that, and how do we manage it, or how could you manage it better? There's so much within that organizational memory, if you want, that could help better inform and help people make better decisions or interventions around the subject that they're looking for. They can use that history to help analyze and manage and help make better informed decisions. So I think that's, at a very high level, that's what we mean by big data.
Yeah, I think just to reiterate, it's very important to realise that big data is, big data to one organisation will be small data to another organisation, and it's really about the organisation's ability to process and to get value out of the data that they have. And if they can't do that, then they've really got a big data challenge. And there's, in the legal context, there's a number of areas where you could say big data is involved. So whether it's in litigation, where you're having to look through vast amounts of data to work out, to find evidence and work out what you're going to disclose, whether it is in due diligence in a mergers and acquisitions type scenario, where again you've got large quantities of data potentially, some of which you maybe don't even know what is in it. So we'll go into talk, I think, later on about differences between search and discover, and discovering information in big data is something else that's quite challenging. And then where contractual information is concerned, organisations may have a big data challenge trying to ascertain any risks associated with the contracts that they have, or again, if you're working on behalf of a client to analyse their contracts, then again there could be some big data challenges or considerations that have to happen there.
It's probably worth mentioning one more bit there. I think everyone's very well aware of the whole GDPR element. So just being able to your data estate and where information is held, and obviously organisations, you should have an idea of where information is being held and why it's being held. But if if you need to go and find and validate where have we got personally identifiable information, then crawling across your digital estate that's a big data challenge. Yeah? So that's just another one in terms of this whole big data definition.
Exactly. Okay. So if I may add to that, then essentially any data sets that need to be reviewed or managed by lawyers, whether it's their own data set within the law firm or of their clients or for a specific M&A project or GDPR project, this could all be considered as a legal big data set that can be accessed with an AI approach, right? So really the value in structuring and extracting legal data is in terms of in business terms, right? Like or do you have anything to add to that? That the idea is about really extracting business value from these data sets.
Yeah, so we'll come on to the AI and definition of AI, but if we take any business and in the legal profession, the lawyers are experts in the subject matter space, and we'll reflect back later on expert systems. But I mean, if you think about lawyers and individuals know exactly what they're looking for and what they need to find. So when they engage with a client, they will know the things that they need to go and validate and find and and search for, and they may have teams of people to help them do that. But it's if you could turn the sequence of steps and take that expert knowledge that they have and make that repeatable, then you could add significant business value. So if I know that to perform a particular diligence exercise, I'm going to have to look for X, Y, and Z, and I'm always looking for these things. It's the first thing I do in my sequence. Individuals will do that, and they hopefully can repeat that, but you should be able to turn that into something far more consistent and repeatable, and actually be able to do it faster and more efficiently with some technology to help behind them. And that's where this analyzing that data to help support those decisions and help them find whatever it is they need is absolutely important. So that ability to perform repeatable operations consistently is absolutely key. I think there's another element I think we found with lots of clients we've talked to is that the analysts talk about spending 20% minimum of their time, individuals' time, just hunting for information before they can actually go on and do the analysis or do the work that they need to do. So just if you take it as 20%, that's 1 in 5 people in an organization. And the majority of things that people tell us they're doing, there's what you might describe as the grunt work or the drudgery, crawling through and finding it and filtering it to get down to a smaller set of data that then the experts can then, the experts can then look at and then apply their knowledge and value against. So being able to get to that step faster, quicker, more efficiently, surely is a business benefit.
And actually, we're thinking about structuring information is concerned. People that know data, or even people that know the data and know what they're looking for, there is a time associated with trying to find what they're looking for, but there are methods that can be applied to data to structure it in a way that you're extracting and surfacing data that is going to be of interest either now or in the future, and that could be personal identifiable data, relating to GDPR, of course, that's quite important, and we'll talk more about that later. But trying to identify people's names or email addresses or bank account numbers or credit card numbers or telephone numbers or postcodes or whatever, being able to have that structured along with maybe key dates and people's names, organisations' names, and so on. That then makes it much simpler for someone that maybe doesn't have the inherent knowledge of the data to actually find information, because it acts as a sort of discovery platform for them to see already what is in that data. So structuring and extracting information is very, very important, both in the legal context and in other contexts also.
I think we'll come on to some use cases and examples, but one that springs to mind is if we take something like lease agreements or contracts where people are analysing. So we've been working with some people who are looking at these and looking at the specific, they understand the language that these contracts and the clauses and the terms are written in, so they know what they're looking for. But if you were reviewing a set of contracts or lease agreements across 30, 40 years, the language itself will have changed and evolved. So you can't consistently look for one thing, but an expert that's been around for a period of time will know the language. So extracting that knowledge and then being able to identify something that was named something very different 30 years ago than it is today is about getting that structure, extracting that, what we might call a data point, and we might come on to that a little bit later.
And do lawyers need any specific capabilities to optimize access to legal data? Is there any special knowledge that we would need to develop to get better in managing data sets?
I was, I'm thinking about that as a wider question for an organization. I think handling big data is about an organization being able to sort of strategically think about what is their search strategy. And I know that seems a bit of a strange way to come at it, but it's really important that an organization understands what data it has, where they have it held, and why they have it held. And actually the GDPR thing is helping organizations focus in on that. But if you then think about it, well, how do we access our client matter repository? If we need to look for cases that we've done in the past to inform how we're going to handle a case in the future, how do you search or look for things within your data estate? So strategically having a strategy around how you manage, look for, and search across your data estate is absolutely key. So as opposed to a specific piece of technology, it's actually more of an approach. Organizations need to take it seriously, search seriously. If 1 in 5 people are, 20% of our time is being used just to help find, or just being used to find information. So that's almost a key element that organizations should be thinking about. We've come across a number of individuals and organizations who will buy into a technology platform, a document management system or whatever, and then the assumption is that that will solve the searchability problem for them. Actually, it will help, but you need to have a mindset, and individuals need to understand how they're going to use that technology to help them. So, and different data sources, accessing emails and attachments to emails versus accessing document management systems versus accessing CRM systems, all require slightly different ways of doing, accessing that information. So at the very least, you need multiple mechanisms, or you need a strategy or some technology that can bridge across all of these. So that's actually key in my mind, to what organizations would need, or what lawyers would need, is almost just an approach and a strategy, and the right tooling to help them do what they need to do, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. A search strategy is definitely a great insight. Max,
Yep.
Did you want to add anything?
Only to say that the search strategy, in my view, it sounds quite big and grand and overarching, but really it could be the needs of small teams or small groups of individuals for certain activities or processes that they are involved with regularly. So you could almost start from, or probably the best bet is to start from the bottom up and establish what individual teams and people need with regard to searching because of the jobs that they have to perform.
Yeah, and another maybe element to that would be thinking about the data. So you could treat the whole organization's data in one thing, but it's a big amount. It's big data, right? So why not curate the data that you need to look for? Look at the data in smaller buckets or smaller sections of so we know what we need to look for, have effective mechanisms to look for within different areas of the business. And and you've got both approaches. So I think you can be very pragmatic about how you do this.
So perhaps it's time to see how AI can help in this respect. How would you define artificial intelligence? How do you think it really helps in this search strategy?
So first of all, I just wanted to say about AI. So as big data has been one of the big terms, hype terms over the last probably 5 years, AI is now the darling in the media. Everyone wants to know about AI, and everyone's talking about AI. And as I said, Mags and I both got 30 years in the industry, and we were using AI and expert systems, as we called them in those days, to manage information and to do exactly what I described earlier about taking people's knowledge, their expertise, and computerizing that expertise to help automate tasks that might be perceived as drudgery or grunt work that you need to repeat, and you need to repeat consistently. So being able to use good engineering to perform a task consistently, in my view, is a very pragmatic AI approach. And actually, a lot of that stuff hasn't changed in 30 years. So there are some new techniques when we talk about machine learning and named entity extraction, but when you distill those down, they can be seen as very just very solid engineering tasks that are about repeatable. So if I think about AI, then it's about techniques that can be used to extract data and consistently define processes for people to be repeatable processes for people, and whether it shouldn't be seen. Maybe that's a case of what do we define it as? What shouldn't we define AI as? It shouldn't be seen as a silver bullet, that it isn't going to solve everyone's problems and it isn't going to replace people's jobs or tasks. What it should be there for is to help aid and help make things more efficient for people, make things faster for people, and actually aid somebody and help them understand what it is they're doing and handle a bigger volume of data, or handle a volume of data more efficiently or more effectively. That's what AI should be about. Max, do you want to?
Yeah, well, again, it has been around for a long time. And to me, if you were to say AI is a machine automating human tasks, that's maybe the bottom line for how I would describe artificial intelligence. But there's different levels or different techniques that are used where artificial intelligence is concerned. There's some of the things that David was talking about. So there's natural language processing, where the English language is interpreted. There's machine learning, where there's computer models that are trained on existing data to then make assumptions and perform activities on future data. And then there's semantic analysis, which is about understanding the context of things. So Warrington as a name, as opposed to Warrington, a town, and named entity recognition, where that's finding categories of things, so people and places and legal terms and so on. But there's also some what maybe I would term more pragmatic AI approaches, where we're not looking at perhaps what could be also defined as the black box things of the things I've just discussed, are maybe a little bit more black box, that they sort of have a bit of a magic aura associated with them, whereas there are other things that can be used that still, in my view, can be termed as AI, but they're a little bit less black boxish. So by some of those things are working with dictionaries and using the contents of dictionaries to help you to identify data points and extract entities from within the data that you have. Recognizing patterns, so having some sort of pattern recognition technology, which will help you to find anything that conforms to a pattern, be that a bank account number or an email address or a telephone number or whatever. Identifying dates and date types also automatically, and even things such as synonym expansion, so finding words that mean the same as the words that you're searching for. So I think all of these things can come under the same umbrella. And as David said, there are some challenges associated with AI, and quite often more so associated with the more black box-ish AI techniques when it comes to legal, particularly when it comes to litigation, because sometimes it's difficult to evidence how you've come up with a particular set of results. Whereas you would need to evidence that if you were going to court. The other side of the coin, if you're using dictionaries, then you have to populate those dictionaries. So there's pros and cons with different approaches, but there is a lot of different approaches out there that can help you to make sense of the data that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that another thing as well, I think there's a variety of techniques that can be used to help you. So if we start at the challenge here is about using or analyzing your big data, your data sets, to help inform and manage a case, a matter. If we boil it down to something as simple as that. And it could be a case of reviewing large sets of documents that have either been provided by a client or maybe some history of yours. So you've got techniques that would allow you to understand what information, what types of documents have we got. What language do they contain? There are good techniques that can be used to do that, and we could class those as AI, and we could evidence those and the algorithms. And I think it is important to talk about, the algorithms that we should use should be explainable. It shouldn't be a magic art in terms of what, so a trained model is looking, at the end of the day, from an engineering perspective, is looking for certain things, combinations of words and structure that then implies that it's similar or it's the same. And then you can make an informed decision when you use that information to make your own decisions. And I think that's how AI should be used. But there's a wealth of things. I think we're going to talk about a number of use cases anyway, around the types of AI that could be used, or just the types of pragmatic approaches I think we can use.
Exactly. My perspective on legal big data actually comes from my M&A background. When in transactions we would be on the due diligence side, we would be typically looking for specific clauses like change of control clauses in thousands of agreements. So can you just go back a little bit and say more on how the semantic search function is different in AI than how we would use a keyword search, for example?
Yeah, so I think, so keyword searching can be, is probably as most people would recognize search that they use today. So they're going to type in one or more terms and they will get a set of results back, which they then have to decide whether or not it's relevant, or what it is that if that is exactly what they're looking for. So if you're looking for a term within a section, within a contract, within a clause within a contract, a specific date, then a keyword search may or may not get you straight to that element. So I think that's the first thing. So lots of the search technologies, if you're using metadata within a document management system, unless somebody's added specific tags to say that these documents contain those things, then you may or may not find them just from that approach. And the keyword searches themselves often will return you documents that contain what we think you're looking for, but you then have to open up the documents again and then search within those documents. So, a very pragmatic way, and one that we've been working on, is to have a multi-word contextualized search, which allows you to have a higher level of precision of what you're looking for. So if you are looking for specific contractual type dates, then those will generally be, they could be prefixed in the contract with an end date, but equally it could be in a sentence where it describes that, and the end of the contract will be on this date. So how do you combine those two things and find those two things? And so that's where AI techniques could come in, where it would look at that language and understand the semantic meaning or the semantic context of where those words exist, and allow you to find those. And I think that's a key difference, and it's actually a very pragmatic difference. One of the things that we pioneered with our technology is around being able to index the inherent structure of textual documents in any language. So, which is another key thing. I think a lot of these technologies will look at English only, and perhaps only American English only, just to kind of point where the technologies might come from. But there's no need to rely solely on the English language to support you. There is an inherent structure in textual documents, whether it's in a sentence in an email, whether it's in a sentence in a paragraph within a database, or whether it's in a document itself. And that is incredibly powerful in terms of allowing you to find exactly what you're looking for. So that multi-word, multi-phrase, almost mechanism and data point mechanism, as Mags described, as sort of dictionary of things that you might want to look for and their alternatives, is an incredibly pragmatic way of finding exactly what you need when you were doing that type of analysis. So we were talking to some people about M&A, so they knew exactly that. In fact, I was involved in the somebody who was making the acquisition, and he was wanting to go over all his documents, and he knew exactly what he wanted to find. So he used the technology to help him find all of those specific dates, and very quickly found them within the set of documents he was given that should have the answers, but he wasn't given all the answers. So being able to interactively crawl through documents you'd have to crawl through them in the old way. But using technology, you should be able to find them really quickly.
Exactly. Absolutely. Thank you so much for this insight. So seems like there's not much that we lawyers would need to do beforehand, or do we need to structure data in any way to make it more efficient to get to the results that we want to see, or can we just leave it all to an AI platform and that will structure the data for us?
I mean, I think I mentioned earlier, I think that there's terminology and language in practice areas within legal firms that is key. So a very pragmatic technique Max described was a dictionary, what we would call dictionary enhancement. So there's a technique called named entity recognition, which could use pure AI. So from universities like Stanford, you could take an algorithmic model which would look for types of things within your documents and data. So it could look for people and places, but it might not be able to discern the difference between Warrington, the town in England, or Warrington, the name, Margaret's surname. So you're using a dictionary approach as a much more pragmatic approach, and your language and the variants of that language. So if you use that approach, then you can find an index across all of your data, all of those terms up front. So there could be an investment in some of your expertise, and I mentioned earlier about expert systems. You as lawyers are experts in your data. You know your subject, so you're almost extracting an element of your knowledge and your data to provide the system some inputs as dictionaries or some training. Almost you could consider it training. That's all you would. That would help the system immensely in terms of being able to find more. And I think what's good about that is you can consistently take one or two experts that know the job and know this area, and they become available within the system for others to use. So, if you know all the language and the variants of them when you're crawling through specific lease agreements, and you're the expert and knows exactly what you're looking for in lease agreements and all the terms and clauses that sometimes catch you out, then that knowledge can be captured, analysed, and then made up front for when somebody else comes along with a new set of lease agreements, and then that knowledge is within the system.
And even taking a situation where you want to understand what legal staff, what lawyers, etc., have interacted with clients or have particular expertise in a particular subject matter, then if you have defined your clients in a dictionary, defined your employees in a dictionary, you can then identify where they occur together. In other words, where a particular lawyer has interacted with a particular client or has been in a case that is about a particular thing. So actually having the capabilities of defining your own data to influence what is surfaced out of, defining your own dictionary entries to influence what is surfaced out of your data can be really, really powerful.
I'll come back to your question though, Orsolya, because I think you asked specifically, so can we just use the technology straight out of the box and get value from it? And actually you can. So there's an awful lot you can do just with the inherent structure of the textual data itself, and that's the absolute core of these technologies. That's what it should provide you. You shouldn't have to train a system.
Okay.
So you can, as long as that expert knows what he's looking for, then they know what to type in. What you can then do is layer on top of that search capability some of that individual's expertise to help other people use the technology even easier, if you know what I mean. So you can add a layered approach, but we're on a daily basis looking at varieties of large volumes of data, whether it's reports that have been published by the government about all sorts of topics, or whether it's Twitter feeds, or whether it's legal cases that have been looked at, and we have no idea what those are, but you can immediately get value just by doing a curated analysis and search across that data without having to apply any specific knowledge against it. So you can straight out the box get up and running.
Great. So let's then just move on to a specific use case in a contract analysis. Let's say in a scenario of thousands of contracts that need to be reviewed for a specific project, whether an M&A deal or internal or external regulatory compliance project, or engagement letters of a law firm, or even thousands of NDAs in a corporate legal department. So where would you start off? What can you actually do to make the review more efficient than manual work? What would be the first step? Or
so, as you said, there's various occasions when you might want to undertake review of contracts, and contract review is a very generic thing, but it might be that you're in a mergers and acquisitions situation, you're undertaking due diligence, and you want to look at the contracts to see what obligations there are within those contracts, any key dates that are mentioned within those contracts, any values within those contracts, maybe any non-standard clauses that might expose the organisation to risk, and therefore make you think, your client think about the acquisition itself. There's a variety of AI type techniques that you could use to make sense of contractual data in that situation and in other similar scenarios. So, for example, if you have a body of data, it may be made up of, it may not just be contracts, it might be contractual information and other information. So the first thing you might want to do is actually find the contracts within that data without having to sift through document by document or run a search and then you say, that's not a contract, I won't bother reading that. So finding the contracts, there are means to do that. And then within the contracts themselves, actually classify or categorize those contracts, because it may be particular types of contract that you're interested in. So techniques available, again, to do that. Named entity recognition would be useful to understand parties and other individuals and organisations mentioned within those contracts. They can be surfaced, as can other key data points. And those data points could be numeric, they could be date related, or they could actually be textual data points that you want to find. In the case of leases, it might be, who's the landlord, who's the tenant. Could be things like, what floor space is in the premises or their car parking, what are any special measures that need to be considered, a variety of things. So identifying the data points within the contracts is something else that you would probably want to undertake and could undertake using AI. It may be that you are interested in looking at how the contracts compare to a standard template or standard clauses. Again, having some means of contract comparison is useful, and again would save a large amount of time, particularly if the tool would enable you to look through a bulk set of contracts and then perhaps even RAG status the contracts. This one you might want to look at because it's really deviating from the norm, whereas this one might have a few things that are different. Something that may do a similarity score for documents to help you identify whether you've got multiples of the same contract, or find duplicates, because you may have duplicates that you need to consider. So there's a whole variety of things that you might want to use, and there is technology available to use to make contract analysis in its various forms actually easier, less mundane, letting the people that have to undertake it right now actually spend more time doing more high value tasks and not be driven mad and with the mundanity of having to read through contract after contract after contract.
Yeah,
exactly.
I was going to a couple of things just to say. I think you'd so if there is a large volume of contracts, then being able to identify which ones we want to look at more closely is key. So we've had that as a use case and an example with our clients where we want to know the hotspots of the contracts. So which ones contain things that we should be more interested in looking at. And actually we had one where they found two documents that they had no idea they would have found. And literally it was within thousands of documents they had to go through, and there were two specific ones that were absolutely key, and they wouldn't have found it any other way, just by using a technique to be able to sort of have a high level view across those documents and realize these two were almost outliers. So we might not be able to tell you exactly what's different about them and what's wrong, but as soon as they were highlighted, there was something that they could immediately look at and say, yeah, these are really important. So it could be based on the content, it could be based on the absence of content, right? So because they could be scanned contracts that haven't been OCR'd, so they're not even searchable. So you've got a variety of different things.
Could even be based on the structure of the,
yes.
the contracts themselves.
Yeah, there was one thing. I think you talked about structure and structure comparison, and actually similarity comparison of clauses within contracts. So if we want to know which of the ones we want to look for, then we want to know which ones have clauses about a particular type of thing. And where that type of thing is, has a damages clause, that's in excess of a particular amount, then being able to use the techniques to find those across thousands of documents, should be pretty valuable. And one other technique you didn't mention, which I think is important, is a summarization as well. So being able to if a lot of these contracts are really large, so having a technique that could summarize them to at least give you a view of what might be in it without having to read absolutely everything could be useful. Now, I'm not to say that the summarization would be, you should rely solely on the summarization, but this is all about being able to do things faster and more efficiently. So if you can get a summary to say this document's got a real, we need to look at this one more closely, then isn't that better than having to go through the whole document, all the documents all up front at once? And that's typically what we find, is that people are spending so much time going through absolutely everything. How do you cut down that task, and how do you make it a bit simpler for people to filter and cut through and simplify the job of cutting through? And I think that's the key thing here.
There might even be, sorry, Orsi, I was just going to say there might be even be more simple contracts such as NDAs, where a legal team doesn't want to have to deal with NDA after NDA, and actually feels that the business unit might be better placed to actually deal with NDAs. Now, in a situation, that type of situation, there's a potential for introducing AI to perform analysis so that it could it understands what an NDA would generally contain, and the sorts of using semantic analysis, the sorts of text that would be in the different clauses within these NDAs. And it's not a step too far to consider that we could automate the process whereby the AI could look through the contract and it could highlight those contracts that had things that were worrying. But if they didn't have things that were worrying, then didn't bother the legal team, because the ND was accessible in the form that it was in. If there was flags raised because of the analysis, maybe some of the textual content was wrong or some clauses were missing, then that could be escalated through to the legal team, and that then means that the legal team has got time to deal with the bigger, more meaty contracts that really they want to and have to deal with, and the simpler things can actually almost happen as a matter of course.
That's, I think, gets pretty scary at that point when a machine can automatically detect contract anomalies. But would you really do that, or you would actually compare? You would reduce the focus on these specific clauses with the help of an AI platform, but you would actually take a look at them yourself as a lawyer and review the NDAs, or would you totally 100% trust a platform to do that review for you?
No, I mean, my view is, I think what you're doing is, if you've got 1,000 documents to look at and you can cut that down to a smaller number that somebody then is reviewing and looking through, then you've saved that person going through all of the thousands of documents. I don't think there's ever, it all comes down to trust, and I don't think it depends on the type of solution whether you can fully automate and 100% rely on it. So, for me, if you can show the working and the learning and how it's been derived, then the lawyer or the person should review what they've got and understand how it's come to that conclusion, and validate it, rather than just accept and then just pass it through. So I don't subscribe to the fact that that all these technologies can be used to just automate and replace an individual. I don't think we're at that stage, and I think computing's still got a way to go before we get to a truly, the movies and the fixed science fiction view of artificial intelligence. I think there's a way off from that yet, but I do think it is about giving people something to be able to review and help inform their decision. And if it can do a lot of the drudgery and they can see how it's come to that, it should be as simple as that. It shouldn't be, as we said earlier, a black box where, well, I don't know how it did that, but it must be right. If they're saying that, there's something wrong. I think it should be about, yeah, we know it's gone off and it's looked for all of these types of things. It's validated that, and it's found these data points based on our knowledge that we put into here, and it's come up with this. So it makes sense. It should make sense when they review it, and I don't think that should ever go away.
Yeah, especially if you upload your own template as a lawyer or in a legal department where you have your own template and compare against that template, and it really makes sense that it helps your job get automated, but still compared to the work you've done earlier and the expertise you've put into that document earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to the specific search functionalities, I think it's very relevant in GDPR context, right? Where really two questions arise day by day. How do you efficiently identify the personal data that needs to be, for example, deleted, or in the case of a data subject access request, how do you locate that data, and how do you show that person what sort of data you use or have in your systems about them?
So I think if I start with this one, I think Max will probably jump in, but I think this starts from, if you know what you're looking for, then you can search for it and you can do it far more precisely. So I think the technology is there. If you don't know what you're looking for, then you need to use discovery techniques, and discovery techniques can be about surfacing information that might be in the documents and data that you did or didn't know was there. So if you don't know what the subject is that you're looking at, then you could surface a set of even just proper nouns or names or values or dictionaries of values within a set of document, and realize that these are lease agreements, or these are NDAs, or these are, so just being able to, you could get the subject from that. And so those techniques are really valuable in the discovery area. And if you take that further, we can do things like, well, if we know that person identifiable data is all around, credit card details, address formats, tax numbers, passport numbers, driving license numbers, we know the formats of those in whichever country they're in. They all prescribe to a particular format. And if they're held within documents or in spreadsheets, in lots of organizations, they end up in spreadsheets. The number of organizations we talk to that use spreadsheets to pass information, and that's an ideal, or unfortunately it's a candidate for going missing or going rogue or wild within an organization, something we would call feral data, where it might get saved on somebody's drive or on a shared drive or emailed to somebody, and that data, once that proliferates around the organization, becomes really hard to find. So you need to be able to look at or have something that can discover the content of the unstructured data and see that we've got stuff, we've got person identifiable data that's somewhere where perhaps it shouldn't be. So that's a technique you can use from a discovery point of view. If you then take it from a SARS perspective, SARS is about, we need to find everything out about David Rivet and Margaret Warrington and Nalytics, and we need to know everywhere that occurs. And so the only way you can do that is, it's going to return lots of results, but you need an efficient and a fast mechanism that will guarantee, will give you all of the results of where those names occur, where those names have correspondence with each other, and then you can collate all of that information. And the technology exists to help pull all of that information together and provide a concise output that can then be securely redacted if needed or whatever. So I think those those use cases exist, and I think that they're probably some of the more the ones we're getting much more interest in at the moment. I think just because of GDPR and SARS, lots of organisations are trying to work out how exactly they can handle they can handle this, because at the moment the manual element involved in these is costing organisations masses of time and money and people's people that are not available to be doing their jobs, and actually almost bringing organisations to their knees. Having to handle and support freedom of information and SARS requests, and the worry associated with it.
Exactly. Yeah. This topic is very much on our desks every day. Seems like.
So just a few other things then. We are doing and have been doing a lot of work for a while now, and helping organisations to deal with GDPR with regard to surfacing personal data, using different enhancers to find patterns of data that conform. The ability to find personal identifiable data within data sets is one thing, and that's great, because once you've found it, the fundamentals is you know where it is, so therefore if you have to delete it or you have to make sure it's moved to somewhere where it should be, then you can do that. But also there's everyone's got their day jobs. There's lots of things that people have to do, so people have got to prioritise. So actually having a mechanism for understanding the density that personal data occurs within documents, within your data sources, can be quite important, because surely you would want to have a look at over here we've got a bunch of data where there's like 4, 5, 6 different types of personal data seems to occur in there. I wonder what that is, whereas if there's the odd one single piece of personal data in something else. So actually being able to work out the density of the occurrence of that can help prioritisation in a situation where everyone is working hard to actually to conform to that legislation. And from a SARS perspective, the need to search for people's information is important, but if you were to do that, even using a search tool, searching for Margaret Warrington, you'll find lots of instances where Margaret Warrington exists in the data. However, Margaret Warrington may be existing in the data as Mags Warrington or Mrs. Warrington or product manager or my national insurance number or my employee number or whatever. So actually having tools that make your life easy by allowing you to define not only the people and the things, the terms that you're looking for as part of the subject access request, but actually being able to define alternatives or synonyms or other ways that name could be defined in the data means that you're not going to miss anything. And that even goes to it includes misspellings. If you've got a difficult name to spell and it's commonly spelled in another way, then you've got to make sure you include that in searches, and having tools that can take you through that process so that you don't miss anything can be invaluable, and it really is very important.
There's one last point I think on the SARS thing, because I was talking to some organisations about this recently. The IT support function, you're massively stressed as well, helping provide the information to be searched. But the dialogue we were having was, well, it must be incredibly hard for the individuals performing the SARS request to repeatedly perform the same search and get the same results, given the manual intensive nature of what it is they're doing. And so having some level of automation that you can evidence and report, why. So if you perform a SARS, yes, you can record this is what we divulged. But in terms of, well, how, what were all the searches you did? Well, it was a manual set of searches that somebody's done. So having that within a system to help you do that, it means you can rerun that search. It means you could add more data sources. You can then consistently get back to that result again. And I think that's we should take note of that, because I think that's an area where you absolutely need to use some technology and automation to help you do that task. Because you need to be able to repeatedly produce the same results. Yeah.
And also you touched on, almost glossed over, redaction, which is obviously a very, very important thing with regard to disclosure of information. So the organisations that we've talked to, so many of them have this big redaction headache, where even if they can find the data that they're going to disclose, They print it off and they get very expensive pens and use them to redact the data within the hard copies. Then they copy that, so they've got a version for themselves and a version that they're going to disclose, and then they digitize the version that they're stating against, so they've got evidence of what they've sent out. And it's a horrendous process for trying to actually but trying to make sure that they dot the I's and cross the T's and they follow procedure. Whereas if you've got a system that lets you find what you're looking for and find the alternatives, that stores the process so that it's reproducible, that stores the information that you've disclosed so that can be got back to, but as importantly, enables you to redact information and produce the redactions within the copies that you're going to disclose. That's really the what term, the sort of nirvana. Yeah, that's the nirvana. That's what you're trying to achieve, and that is possible, you know. So don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It is. So that's really what people should be aiming for, I would say.
It's really great to have at hand a platform that can, really help with contract analysis and M&A projects and GDPR. Do you envision any other scenarios where reviewing legal big data would benefit, long-term goals of law firms or corporate legal departments beyond the cases discussed?
I think that, did we mention litigation? It's probably, I think that one of the things when we first got involved in this technology and thinking about it came from a sort of research background. And in a research background, you have an idea of what you're looking for. You know what you're looking for, you have an idea of what you're looking for. And I guess in litigation terms, often it's a case of the legal expert will know that there may well be language or communications of these types that they need to go and look for within the body of material that's been disclosed to them from their clients, and it's almost like hunting out that golden nugget. In investigative journalism, it's about being able to find that they're hunting for something that they think is going to be there, and how do you find that? So having technology to support you do that, it's an absolute use case. So I think we've got a number of organisations looking at it from a litigation point of view, or the technologies, as to how can we, how do we, and again, discovery comes into that space. So they know the types of things that they're looking for. Maybe it's an individual or a company name or a place or a location or even a date. And if you use if you think about the named entity recognition technique that we talked about earlier, so you could have all dates that have been identified, places, people, and other terminology, so companies that are involved. Now, where those intersect with each other might dictate a key piece of information of, somebody was talking on that date about this company and about that place. And that might be the key to the whole litigation scenario, or one of the key elements. There's a great, one of the analysis we did a number of years ago was in the UK, the Levison inquiry was all about the News International scandal. And when you looked at the report that was published, trying to find out what was being said or where it all started and who intersected, but we could quite quickly find, the Fore Neville email, which was the heart of all of this, Mulcair, which was one of the private investigators, and then James Murdoch talking about this, and actually get to that within a few seconds, find where that was mentioned in the report. Now imagine that News International and the Murdochs had capability like this to crawl across their estate of emails and email archives. You'd be able to get to the pertinent and key information that they need to either divulge or at least know about from a litigation perspective. So I think that's is maybe a more intricate one, but it's a key use case as well.
And perhaps another one could be about migrating data. When one organization changes, data archives, how do you migrate all that data?
Yeah,
do you know what to do?
Yeah, so one of going back across my years in IT, but working with implementing or integrating with different systems, where it often comes down to organizations are bringing in a new piece of technology that's going to change the business. And so they've got, if it's a matter management or case management system in legal, the new system is going to be able to handle things better. But what we need is all the data from the old system, or they don't want to lose all the data from the old system. And one of the biggest challenges from IT vendors and for the organization, one of the big risks is trying to take all of that data from the old system and squeeze it somehow into the new system. And I think the question from an architectural point of view for me is, do you need all of that information in the new system? If it's historical, then if you had it somewhere where you could find it when you need it, then only actually bring the information that you need into the new system. So you immediately cut down the migration task massively, you reduce the risk. And in some cases, we've taken all of the history and then preserved the history, made it super searchable, and so you can access it. You can discontinue the licensing and decommission the hardware and the infrastructure supporting the old system, but you still have all the documents and data that you need to be able to find when you need it. And you can implement your new system far quicker, far faster. You've got less risk associated. There's going to be no delays of getting it up and running. So that preservation use case has been an absolute key for us. And in other industry sectors, we've been working on this, where you'll discontinue the old system or decommission the old system, preserve its history and data, and implement the new system. And as if you talk to any person, the biggest issue is always about getting the new system up and running and the delays associated with it. And they're often to do with the migration aspects. I'm not saying you can remove all of them. In some cases you could, but you can significantly reduce that risk just by taking a preservation strategy. And that preserve has untold business value as well. If you think about for one of our clients, 15 years worth of their case history. So wouldn't it be useful to be able to research across that case history and look for the types of cases that resulted in this type of outcome, or did we ever deal with this individual or this company or these places? And you could look right across that whole estate as a whole, as a piece of research to support you. And I think that's almost an untapped. It's a hard one to get people to sort of realize you've got something there that could help you, your own archives and your own history. If you've got individuals that might remember things, but how do they find what it is they're looking for? And if you had it in a discoverable place, that preserve is actually incredibly valuable. Last point on this, because I've dealt with so many people with we often call them legacy systems, and a nicer word I like is heritage systems, but the data that's been amassed and kept in there is so valuable to the business, they're really worried about losing it. So if you can preserve it safely and securely and then use it, that's all that matters. And I know you have regulatory guidance for some documents and data that need to be held, so you that's part of the preserve. That's what it's there for. So preserve technology and use cases is a key use case in my book.
Yeah, and it's really helpful to actually have this tool in any language available, because we all know how developed the legal tech solutions are in other more Western areas, but in Central Eastern Europe, with so many languages in our jurisdictions, it's really an issue how to locate and find your key information from your legacy data as well. So what do you think the future holds for AI in the legal industry? Do you think it's worth to be an early adopter? It seems like it's really the best thing you can do.
The early adoption question is a good one. As I said, I think good technology supporting businesses has been around for ages, and arguably you could call some of that AI in my opinion. I don't think we're in an early adoption phase. I think if you look carefully at your needs, you look at your search strategy, and it should be about your data and your search strategy. An organization should be looking at that from a GDPR perspective anyway, just understanding what they've got and why they've got it and where it is, and how are they going to find things to support areas of the business. And then look at some of the very specific areas or use cases in the different practice areas within a business, whether it's mergers and acquisitions or litigation or disclosure. So understanding those, it's not too early to be an adopter of technology to support them. And I don't think you need to jump. There's lots of good technology out there. I think the best bit of advice I could take, and we talk about this, is being very pragmatic about it. Make sure that it can evidence the type of thing that you want to do. If it is about simplifying this task or reducing, making it more efficient, then have evidence of that. Let the technology show you how it works. And I know the technology out there can do this, can help you very quickly evidence real savings in terms of time and effort and efficiency, and be far more effective than just purely manually looking through documents and data. So I don't think it's too early.
I think I would take it a step further and say that I don't think organisations can afford to wait too much longer, because the efficiencies, the cost savings, the opportunity costs, the benefits that can be garnered from using artificial intelligence and other technologies associated with search and discovery is such that organisations that don't use it could potentially be left behind.
They should be, they could be seriously disadvantaged.
Yeah.
I think with the market itself is driving, the clients out there are driving different models of engagement where they want things cheaper, they want them faster, they want them, so I think the model is changing. The market isn't. You can't just, you need to be able to do things more efficiently. And I think I think one example we had where somebody was taking days, to perform a particular task. Now, whether or not they can charge all of that back to the client, but if they can do that in a matter of hours and minutes, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, you can't ignore something that turns days into hours and minutes, and the technology absolutely can do that. And I think organizations, and you don't have to be a big organization with big budgets to engage in technology that will help you do these things. There are ways and technologies that you can engage with to help you do these things. And it's about thinking smarter, working smarter.
I think also, and this is with my product manager hat on, there are organisations such as ours that want to engage with legal firms and legal teams within our other organisations to actually develop even more technologies that are going to benefit organisations. And so actually for people that are of that mindset, actually partnering up or coming in at an early stage in a new piece of technology can be quite exciting and can help to drive things that maybe don't exist but could exist relatively quickly.
I mean, a couple of more points. I think if you take new people coming into the industry, into the legal industry, are going to come out of university, they're much more technically savvy and aware, and they will want to use technology to help them do what they do. If you can be engaged in technology in every other aspects of your life, but not within your place of work, it will become disheartening. I think technology has to be embraced there. I think the worry that there is about AI taking over people's jobs, I think that's misplaced. It's about making people available, or optimizing people's time to do what they should be doing, the more important part of their job. So it's about removing the drudgery, right? It means you can do bigger jobs, it means you can do jobs faster. So it isn't about replacing people. It shouldn't be seen as that. AI isn't coming in here to fully replace. As I've said, I don't believe the technology will ever be, in our lifetimes, something that you would 100% rely on, and you would just make a decision on that. It should all be something there to aid and to help the people, the experts, help them inform and make their decisions.
Shall we perhaps turn towards the audience and see if they have any questions?
Sure.
Julia, can you please help us with that? I'm not sure I can see the questions from you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I think if anyone does want to, I think you're able to post some questions through the chat. So if there is anyone that wants to ask something, by all means.
Okay. In the meantime, perhaps the question I often receive around AI is how does it work with the language aspect? So how do you actually go around that it can understand the semantics of any language?
Well, I think that there are a couple of aspects. I think technically, one technique that we've been pioneering, we've worked on to be language independent is to just use the inherent structure of textual data. So any Western-based character set can be handled in the same way and analyzed, so all words exist within sentences, within paragraphs, and we can be able to break the textual data down in that way. Allows you to perform what I've described as precision search, and it doesn't matter what the language is. And if you then apply the AI techniques of dictionary-based enhancement or named entity extraction, that works with any language because it's your input and your language that you're then looking for. So the combination of those two things is incredibly powerful, and it doesn't have to rely on an AI trained model. It's some of the technologies that don't support multiple languages are relying on language-based dictionaries, right, to support them. So some of the particularly at the Northern American sort of algorithms and universities that clearly they're based on what they have there, but they're not thinking about the plethora of European languages that are out there and how to handle those. So I think there are techniques, and ours is one of them that lets you handle any type of language. And I think it should be like that. I think the technology, that technique will let you search and find what you need.
Thank you for this insight. I'm not sure. I cannot see any specific questions. I don't know if Julia, if you can identify any, or shall we thank the audience and our guests tonight and come to an end? So unless any questions or any final thoughts on your end, David, Max, that you would like to add?
I think that we left it on a good place with this whole idea about whether or not we should adopt. It should be about looking and adopting AI or technology, and I think that's it is absolutely key to do that. And I think it's compelling, right? The use case and of time savings and value to the business is compelling out there to make people in all my years in technology, it's always about what can we do to help drive and help help being more efficient or more effective. And I think that's a good strategy to have, and I think all organizations should think that way.
Yep.
Okay, so good search strategy and using the AI platforms for contract analysis and really going around and accessing and managing legal big data more efficiently is really what the future holds, even in business terms. So with that, I would like to thank again to our guests, David Rivat and Margaret Warrington tonight, and all our attendees and the ELTA support for this webinar. It was a pleasure to get your insights into managing legal big data. Many thanks to everyone again, and look forward to having you at the next event of the ELTA webinar series, or perhaps at the ELTA conference later in the fall on 11th and 12th of September in Amsterdam. So see you soon. Thanks again for attending, and good luck with everything you do. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.